Morning, guys. Happy Monday. Hope you're off to a good start to your week. I know it's been a busy weekend. It has for us here, but a lot of busy weekend headlines as well, and a lot of different news to take in that's not the easiest. Of course, one of the big news items, the mass shooting in New Zealand, which we'll talk a little bit about in a moment. My kiddos are watching, is The Emperor's New Clothes? New Groove. Not my favorite movie, but they were out all weekend, and so we're letting them watch a little movie, which might mean we're bad parents. I don't know. But this morning we needed a little extra time. So before we get to New Zealand, which again I would like to talk about, I want to show you this picture that I just saw out of Nebraska, because there is mass flooding happening in the Midwest and really feels like it's not getting enough attention. And some of you actually wrote me over the weekend. Thank you for flagging it, because I might have missed it too. You know, we talked about the bomb cyclone, that crazy weather pattern that emerged last week that was causing these blizzard, hurricane-like conditions across 25 U.S. states. And this is really the after effect of it that caused a lot of this icy, freezing flooding, dams failing. I mean, it's just a really horrible situation, especially in Nebraska and Iowa and Missouri. The Missouri River is a major focus, but take a look at this picture just so you can see, like, what does this actually look like? That's a semi truck that's underwater that was swept off the road. I mean, look at that stop sign. We all know how tall a stop sign is, but this is just one area. This is in Nebraska, and you just can see, like, terrible. These whole towns are separated. Some of them from people getting in or getting out or being completely evacuated. So I just want your attention on that, because that's one of the big things that's happening in the United States today. The U.S. Coast Guard is involved. You have the military involved. In fact, in Nebraska, a whole Air Force base that is about a third of it is flooded. So a lot of different folks affected by that, and I just want to make sure that we pay attention to what's going on there. So if you have any pictures from that part of the country you'd like to share with the SmartHER News community, come on, direct message me, email me, info@smarternews.com, and we'll include it, because it's nice to get your perspective on what's happening in your world as well. You know, the New Zealand story is a hard story to continue to read and report on, because it's so awful. You know, one of the hard things about being a news anchor on live television is you'd always have to kind of put on a brave face and be very unemotional. And last night, I just could not be emotional about it. It's just such a horrific event. And I see the news media trying to explain away what happened so quickly, because that's human nature in part. You know, we like to try to explain the unexplainable. And there's a lot of focus on the shooter. Why did he do it? Because, well, we want to know, like, why did this happen? But the truth is, for every moment that we spend talking about the shooter is a moment that we don't spend talking about the victims. And I thought it would be really wise for us today just to talk a little bit about the victims in the shooting, so that we give them the proper energy and due before we launch into, what is the potential cause of this dastardly deed. So the basics are pretty clear. You had a gunman go into two mosques in Christchurch, New Zealand, and open fire during Friday prayer, the busiest time of the week at these mosques. The victims range from 3 years old to 77, according to the information that we have right now. You have dozens of people still in the hospital, so just remember that these numbers may change. And right now, 50 people died. This is the worst mass shooting in New Zealand in modern history. We often use that term modern history, even in the United States, to talk about mass shootings, just because we're talking about when the most available data is available for historical context. So, do we know if 300 years ago, if there was, I don't know. It's just to add a little caveat to, okay, this is in modern history when we're starting to look at modern crime data. So it's the worst shooting in New Zealand history. One of the questions that I had is, I didn't know anything about the immigrant community in New Zealand. And as I was looking more closely into the victims, you see that these victims are from all over the world, and they had relocated or immigrated to New Zealand. A lot of them from places like Jordan or Syria or Bangladesh or Kuwait, and I was curious about that, just because it's not something I associated with New Zealand. New Zealand is a country of about 5 million people, so it's half the size of New York City as an entire country. It's about 5 million people. New York City is just over 9 million or about there. So it's, it's half the size of our largest city. And when I was looking at immigration, really to get some background about it in New Zealand, I didn't find much. I found that during the last election cycle, there was talk about immigration when it came to housing crisis and housing availability, but not specific towards any one religion. And when, at least from my early reading of it, because I was looking for bias or angst or, just some sort of context to understand the immigrant community in general. And what I found repeatedly was testimonials from either it was victims, families, or just in general talking about how warm and hospitable New Zealand was as far as immigration into the country. So we'll take a little bit more look at that. I'm not looking at that as particularly a source of tension that would again explain this crime. I just wanted to get an understanding of the community that was targeted. And so these mosques were communities that really involved worshipers from all over the world with a lot of different diverse backgrounds. And that's something I think you should know when you're thinking about the New Zealand attack and those affected, and families, entire families affected by this horrible crime. So we'll leave, there's a lot of debate about what's happening with the shooter, who is he inspired by, and again, I just feel like let's keep our energy focused on the victims. Those are the facts we know. We know who was affected by this crime. Let's pay proper attention and give them proper due, and if necessary, we can dig in more to what actually motivated the shooter and what were the elements around the crime. But right now, I just wanted to make sure that we prioritize the victims. I think it's something that makes Smarter News a little bit different. Okay, we'll leave those crazy debates right now to other people. Okay, kind of a fun study I just wanted to talk to you about. Over the weekend, you might have seen that I shared a recipe from my grandmother's repertoire. My grandmother, Josephine, was born on Saturday in 1922. She passed away a couple years ago, but she has a great frittata recipe that I've used, and you've seen sometimes on Coffee Talk that I shared on Saturday. What was really fun about this weekend is my brother, my little brother, my baby brother had a baby and named that baby Josephina. And she was born almost on the exact same birthday as my grandmother Josephine. So we have another Joey in the family, which is really exciting. In the meantime, as I'm looking at the news and sharing this frittata recipe with you, I'm noticing there's a new study out on eggs. And of course, the major ingredient for a frittata is eggs. And there's been all this debate over the last year about whether or not eggs are good for you. Whether or not they have too much cholesterol and we shouldn't be eating them and we should eat egg whites. I mean, blah, 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 blah. It's like so crazy. It's like too much. But there's a new study out that took a look at 6 previous studies and tried to determine if eating eggs caused or there was an association, not a cause, an association with cardiovascular disease. The association is important because what the researchers did not prove cause and effect, and that's something you should know. It did not prove that eggs cause cardiovascular disease or early death. However, the researchers said the more eggs someone ate, the higher the likelihood or the association with cardiovascular disease and early death. So again, not cause and effect, but an association. Now, there's some problems with this study. It really relied on different studies of different people that were remembering their diet. They didn't take into consideration like how someone cooked their eggs. So if they were frying their eggs versus hard boiling their eggs versus anything else in their healthy habits. Did this person run 5 miles every day, or did this person like fried eggs and French fries in the morning? So there's a lot of problems with the study, but since it's such a big study, and from what I understand, it's a solid study. We're back in the debate about whether or not eggs are good for you. So the lead author of the study was saying, hey, we don't want people to think that you shouldn't eat eggs, but maybe cut back on your yolks, or which have the cholesterol in them, or just your consumption overall. I called my friend Christy, one of my girlfriends, and she's a mom. She's also a registered dietitian. She's a lecturer at a college on nutrition. So she's the person to talk to. And I was like, Christy, talk to me about this study. And she said, oh my gosh, I've been reading this. I have so many thoughts on it. So I included her thoughts in our card stack because she's a real mom and a real dietitian. And she was like, listen, everything in moderation, but if you take out the yolks of the eggs, you're really taking out all the good vitamins that you need. And so she had some questions about this study too, and she also shared her favorite egg recipe with us, which is on the SmartHER News source page if you want to check that out. So anyways, bottom line, okay, there's still some debate about whether or not there's an association between eggs and heart disease or cardiovascular disease, but it's not a proven cause and effect. So that's to be your takeaway if you know. I thought it was interesting. Finally, and then I'll let you guys go. Did you know there's still one Blockbuster left in the United States of America at the video rental store? Blockbuster did declare bankruptcy several years ago, but there was one, if you owned a franchise as an individual, like you could keep the franchise open if you could keep it going. And there's apparently 2 left in the world. One is in Australia that's closing at the end of March, and there's one in Bend, Oregon that is fighting to stay open. And it's become a little bit of a tourist destination. So retro video rental, is there a market for it? I don't know. When Dad stopped by and said he wanted to show his 3 and 5-year-old what it looks like to see videos outside of an iPad, which I could totally understand. My kids are not going to know anything about CDs or DVDs. By the way, it totally works in a video rental store inside a grocery store. I wasn't very good at it. I wasn't. My brother was good at it. My older brother, he was really good at it because he watched a lot of movies. I wasn't very good at it. I was really good at the bookstore where I later worked. See, there's a difference. And here we are. So there you go, full circle. Okay, guys, hope you're having a great day. And if you have any stories you'd like to see us cover, please let us know, or any questions about stories that we are covering. We'd love to hear your thoughts. And yeah, I'm so glad to have your support, and thank you so much. Check out smarternews.com. I'm also going to post our newsletter that we posted over the weekend. If you haven't signed up for that, please do. All right, guys, I'll talk to you later. Have a great day.